but ultimately prices will start to normalize. So I don't think the CBN or the Minister of Petroleum or anybody else should be speculating at this time.
In all of this, so what does comment, like this do to the market?
It increases the level of uncertainty. One thing the markets cannot handle, whether it is the stock market, whether it's the money market, one thing the markets cannot handle is uncertainty. So if you come out today or yesterday to say, let the market forces determine the price, then the following day or 2 days after, you come up and you mention a particular figure. In my view, that is a political statement. I think we should truly allow the market to run. What the CBN, what the federal government, and what every Nigerian should concern themselves about now is, how do we increase the stock of dollars that come into Nigeria? Which means that all of this, our export potential, that has remained potential for a long time, let us start to convert those potential into actual value. So as long as we export a lot more, and I'm not just saying we should be exporting like we've done previously, primary products. Let us add value, let us export, let us earn a significantly larger or higher amount of foreign exchange. When we bring that into Nigeria, it helps the Nigerian economy, it strengthens your currency, and makes you even more competitive in the global world.
Because, I was going to ask if we have even sat down to address why are we in this situation in the first instance, where everybody's scrambling, the dollar is this, the pound is that. And this speaks to that, doesn't it?
It does indeed. One of the positives, yet another one of the positives from this recent pronouncement, I read somewhere today that the CBN is going to provide yet another intervention fund to the tune of 500 billion, and the objective is to support export-focused businesses. Now, I think that is an excellent idea. I think critical implementation has always been the problem. CBN has a slew of intervention funds, but if you look at the performance of every single one of them, I would dare say that most of them have not achieved 50% uptake. So it means that the processes through which people can access those funds, those processes need to be streamlined, they need to be made friendlier, because really, unless we grow our productive base, unless we enhance our export potential, Chamberlain, I think we will still be having this conversation in 5 years' time.
Because, when one read that intervention part, as much as it at least injected a ray of hope, but looking at the other one where you see taxes payable by manufacturers up from 39, now 61, you ask yourself, look, what's going on?
I agree with you. One of the greatest challenges we face as an economy oftentimes is the conflict between one part of government and another. The central bank is in charge of monetary policy, interest rates, exchange rate, inflation, money supply, and all of that. But you then have the federal government who's in charge of fiscal policy, taxation, government spending, and all of that. Oftentimes you see a conflict between these two policy agents. Now, the central bank is trying to bring down inflation by reducing money supply. The government is trying to stimulate the economy by pumping money into the economy. Now, there is a need for greater coordination. The monetary and fiscal authorities need to sit down, streamline their plans, and make sure that they are not operating in conflict to each other, but are actually complementing each other. Because Nigeria is in a very, very critical situation now. Our backs are to the wall. The economy has suffered significantly. The World Bank says that our reserves should cover at the very minimum 6 months worth of exports. Today, we do not meet that particular threshold. Today, we have a new forex regime that will have to, from Monday, deal with the pent-up demand that some analysts have estimated at anywhere from $3 to $5 billion. Where will that come from? That is why I said very likely in the short term, you will still see a significant Naira devaluation. But over time, as the supply improves, then hopefully the Naira will strengthen.
When you spoke the last time here in the studios, perhaps we should be asking the question, what exactly do you think that the government or the CBN was hinging its policy or hope on, to the extent that a lot of people thought the advice from experts within and even outside the country wasn't worthy to take into account, even when the IMF spoke on that.
Yeah. Again, I dare say that my personal opinion is that CBN was dealing with a purely economic matter from a political perspective. CBN was watching the infamous body language of the executive, and the body language of the executive, as encapsulated by our president, was that I do not support devaluation, I do not support deregulation of the downstream petroleum industry. Now, the CBN, in my view, was simply echoing the statements and the feedback and the feelers that was coming out of the presidency. I think for us to fundamentally change our economy, the independence of the CBN that is enshrined in the amended CBN Act, right, that independence must be enforced. The governor of the CBN is an independent entity and should not take his cues or his instructions. By all means, consult. But the decision, economic monetary policy decisions, are for the board of governors of the CBN to take. So my own view is that we have wasted one whole year and lost a lot of money and put our economy virtually in a recession simply because the independence of the CBN was not exerted from day one.
You know, another issue that Nigerians, especially those in diaspora, because we're looking at the windows where we get inflow, we're talking about exports, and also talk about FDIs, which also includes the millions of Nigerians outside the shores. They wondered if you say we've always had two markets, the banks and the parallel markets, it seemed that when sometimes they have some dealings, the banks don't use their own rate. They still go back to use the parallel market or the bank at the black market rate, making it look like we've always had one, you know, market, like a single market, which is the black market, that even the banks operated on.
Yeah, I hear you, Sulaiman, but I believe that this current policy, which is why we had always been advocating for a liberalized market, because as long as government remains, or CBN rather, remains an enforcer, as long as they say this is the price at which the naira must exchange for convertible currencies, what you are automatically doing is you are asking all of the other players in that market to resort to self-help and do what works best to them. So that's why you will find the banks, right? Official exchange rate at the time was 199. But like you rightly said, there's hardly any bank in Nigeria, right? Even your basic credit card, MasterCard, Visa card transactions, they were not priced at 199. Now, but I believe that this new policy will largely remedy, to a large extent, that particular problem. Because now the banks, especially these 10 banks who are going to be the primary dealers in the FX market, they will set the tone, right? The market, whatever price is prevailing on a daily, hourly basis, will be something that was determined by demand and supply forces. You know, so there will be no question of a particular rate that somebody favors other than the other. It will be purely market determined.
Also speak to this for us, if you will, because it will seem as if we're breaking it down. At the coming of this administration, a few months into the life of this administration, we saw a statement from the CBN stopping, you know, deposits of hard currency by Nigerians, and the reason was that there was too many of them that they could take at that point in time. What went wrong between having surplus to scarcity? Did they make some kind of mistake with that policy? Was there anything they were trying to pursue that they just couldn't get hold of at the end of the day?
Without equivocation, I believe it was a misguided policy.